Hi everybody, in this video we're going to be looking at the move 3 knight f6 for black. Knight f6 is a move that sort of invites white to go for another very complicated variation, which is usually seen in the games of Sveshnikov players, which happens after something like knight to c3, queen c7, short castle, and knight to d4. Now this is a variation that could very well appear from another line, which is the anti-Sveshnikov, which starts with knight to c3, after which knight f6, bishop to b5, we see that we sort of reach this position. It's a very theoretical line with several options for black already after bishop to b5 here, and I do suggest to go for something a little different, which is the move knight f6, bishop takes c6. Not uncommon to us at this point, and here black pretty much exclusively plays the move d takes c6. After b takes c6, I guess, again, we go for the move e5, and black shouldn't be too happy about something like this. We've already seen in previous lines that after something like short castle g6, c4, this could be dangerous, but also d6, I suppose white can just go d3. And structurally it's not so easy for black to play around the e5 pawn. And of course we can always think about kicking back the knight with c4. So d takes c6 is almost always played by black here, and here we go d3. Now the main reason why I'm going to recommend bishop takes c6 is not because I don't think white might be a little bit better after knight to c3, but I do think white has very good chances of an advantage here as well, and it requires a lot less theoretical knowledge. So that being said, let's have a look at some of black's options over here. First of all, if black goes g6, we go h3, and we transpose back into our repertoire, which is covered in the first couple of videos of this Rosalimo series. And we do not have to discuss this too much. After bishop to g7, knight c3, we're back in familiar territory. So already here we can see that this is actually a decent option for black. He has a move to get back into one of the main lines. Of course, if you play this as black, it makes sense to try another move. And I would start off by looking at the move knight to d7. Now this move is preparing e5, which was also an idea we saw a little bit here and there in the main lines after g6, bishop takes c6, d takes c6. I like the move bishop to f4 here, stopping e5, and also after f6, e5 can be played with white, and I think we have a very good position. Black's king is not looking very comfortable after this. So I consider g6 to be here the main move, but I think the move queen c1, which is quite clever, should give white a very pleasant advantage over here. The main idea is that we would like to go queen d2, bishop to g7, bishop h6, but clearly now the b2 pawn would be hanging, and we would have to waste a move, or well, waste, but we would have to spend a move playing knight to c3, giving black some options like e5 here, but also maybe h6. So queen to c1 would be my move, my preferred move. It also keeps this idea of knight d2, knight c4, perhaps in the position. And of course now after bishop to g7, bishop, short castle, bishop h6, we reach a position which is very pleasant for white. It once again sort of looks like some of the lines that we were looking at in the videos on bishop takes c6, d takes c6 after the move g6 on move 3. And given that we looked at the ideas there, I think that this should be a position in which you can find yourself pretty comfortable with white. Going back to d3, another move over here is the move bishop to g4, and I think this is what has recently been the trend to try as black, with a few strong players such as Arkady Naidich trying this out. I think h3 is the most normal move for white to respond here. Once again we see a situation in which black can give up the bishop on f3, and it's definitely not a very bad position, but let's say he goes e5 here. I do think that white once again has the better play over here. And this was a game between Wróblewski and Gagunashvili from 2003. Black didn't want to go g6 here because knight to c4 would then be very annoying, as he can't really develop his bishop. Something like g6, knight to c4, bishop g7. We'd probably run into an annoying check on d6. So instead of that he went queen to f6, planning to either develop the bishop to d6 or e7. Knight c4 was played, and after bishop to e7, f4, I think white definitely had the better position over here. Once again, a slight structural advantage, but also we very conveniently managed one of our main plans in this type of formation, pawn formation, f4, and after something like castles over here. White was definitely a bit better. Once again, the game Wróblewski against Gagunashvili. Instead, after h3, I think the move bishop to h5 is quite a lot more challenging. And I was looking at this for a while. After some thought, I came up with an idea which I think looks very convenient for white. It's something that we haven't quite seen in any of the previous lines yet, and not the type of move that I like to play in the Rossolimo in general, but in this case it works well, which is the move b3. Now, first of all, it's black's main idea of playing this bishop g4, bishop h5. He wants to get the bishop out of the way and then go for his usual setup with knight d7 and e5. And if he manages to do that, he probably has a decent position, especially if we didn't get a proper way to get the bishop on h5. Now, therefore, the most logical move here would be to go knight to d7, and after bishop to b2, obviously black cannot play e5 because we would just win a pawn after the following sequence. So e5 has to be prepared, and the main idea here for white is that after the move f6, which would create some another square on f7 for the bishop potentially, and of course it's preparing e5, we can play e5 immediately here, which I think is a very strong move. Black could take here with the knight, but after something like this, followed by either knight d2 now or maybe g4 and then knight d2, we will win back the e-pawn and remain with a much better structure. So I looked at the move e6 here for a little bit, but after something like g4 and queen e2, followed by knight d2 and long castle, I like white's position. Once again, this move b3 is kind of a novelty in an already pretty rare line, but since I saw a bit of a trend here for black, I thought it would be worth mentioning. And this e5 idea is pretty nice, so I would definitely suggest you to try out this b3 move. Going back to the initial position, I think one of the most normal looking moves is the move queen to c7 over here. It's a very healthy way of preparing e5, and I don't think we have any clever ideas to really stop it. Bishop to f4 doesn't work anymore. e5 now I'm not really a big fan of, as black can simply play knight to d5 and follow up with logical moves. Of course this is playable and has been seen in games, but white hasn't quite achieved the type of advantage that I'm looking for, and I think it's best to just castle and allow black to play that move, e5. Now after e5 I like the move a4, and as we sort of seen before, very often this move a5 is not something that black really wants to allow. Of course you can consider it, but I think it always leads to some small pressure on the queen side, so I do think a5 is the most logical move. And here there's an idea that you should keep in mind if you face this line, which is bishop to g5. Now we haven't seen this move pretty much in any of the other positions, but in this case, since black hasn't played g6, the whole line is a little different. Once again, black wants to go knight to d7 and sort of get a normal position, and has to have those knight f8 ideas in the future. However, of course that would sort of leave the bishop on c8 a little bit uncomfortable. So one of the main ideas would be to go something like bishop to g4 and then knight to d7 once again. And in this case we haven't really succeeded in playing something like b3, e5, so this makes all pretty good sense. However, after bishop to g5 we see that we're inviting black to go knight d7, after which he will struggle to put the bishop on the most natural square e7, and he leaves his bishop on c8 undeveloped, so it's not something black would really fancy doing, and I think bishop to e7 is therefore the most logical reply here. I would go knight to a3, bishop e6 looks normal, and here for example the move queen to e1 seems to give white a bit of an edge after short castle queen c3, when black is still suffering to really defend the pawn e5 in a convenient way. And yeah, I think this is just an easy way for white to achieve the type of position that you would be looking for. Once again, all these lines are not very theoretical, most of these are just my take on this position. Knight f6 is one of the least popular moves, at least I have faced it very few times. But with the following ideas, I think you will find yourself in positions that are very similar to some of the other Rossolimo lines we have looked at, and definitely give white easy play. So keep in mind mostly some of the ideas that you've seen in this video. They're all pretty much based on ideas that we saw in the main line with g6, bishop takes c6, d takes c6, but slightly different versions. Once again, black is trying to get some sort of a favorable version of an already known pawn structure to us. And if we are clever, we can definitely prevent him from getting something a little bit better than the main line. So thank you for watching. In the next video, we'll be rounding up the Rosalimo and we'll be looking at rare moves for black on move 3.